heard what you said to Mr. Cole, Mr. Brown, Mr. Johans, and it's not coming together for me either. And I'm going to refer to the March 30th White House Determination of Viability Summary for the General Motors Corporation in response to their viability plan of February 17, in which the document states the company is currently burdened with underperforming brands, nameplates, and an excess of dealers. The plan does not aggressively enough act to curb these problems. It goes on to say that GM has been successfully pruning unprofitable or underperforming dealers for several years. However, its current pace will leave it with too many such dealers. These underperforming dealers create a drag on the overall brand equity of GM and hurt the prospects of the many stronger dealers who could help GM drive incremental sales. Then, on May the 15th, the Treasury Department says that, as with the case with Chrysler dealer consolidation plans, the task force was not involved in deciding which dealers or how many dealers were part of GM's announcement. So it seems to me that the task force is, and the Treasury is saying, you didn't act aggressively enough, you haven't cut back on enough dealers, but you're saying to the public, gee, we're not involved in those decisions. And in fact, now that we know what dealers are being closed in both Chrysler and GM, there are profitable dealers that are being closed, not just underperforming. And I still don't understand, when the dealer buys the car, the dealer provides the real estate, the dealer provides the showroom and the repairs and rents the signs, how is it a drag on the company, and why is the White House saying that an excess of dealers is a problem, even profitable dealers? It's a disconnect for me, I think, as well as many of my colleagues.
Let me see if I can answer that. I think you certainly accurately quoted the President's statement on the, or it was, I think, a fact sheet from the 30th. It's certainly an accurate quote. I think what we said, in addition, however, is we said that overall, General Motors is burdened by excess capacity in many areas. We said that their plant footprint has excess capacity, their dealer network has excess capacity, their white and blue collar ranks. All of these things are not commensurate with the current size and prospects of the company. And so what we told General Motors when we rejected their February 17th submission is you need to go back and you need to take a more aggressive approach. And yes, that included dealers, but it included plants, and it included white-collar headcount, and it included blue-collar headcount, and it included every aspect of the company from the top to the bottom. And the company came back with a more aggressive plan to rationalize its dealer network. I think what we said on the 15th was also true, which is we did not give them a numerical target, but we certainly did say, regarding plants, regarding dealers, regarding white and blue collar headcount, regarding all these matters, that you need to be more aggressive, because our judgment was on the February 17th plan that they were not going to achieve the kind of profitability that would make them long-term viable. It was their determination that this level of consolidation of the dealers was consistent with a path to long-term viability. And we did not say, why not 5 more or 10 more or 5 or 10 less. We scrutinized the analysis in all areas and concluded that overall it was a proper plan and reflected a good business judgment, and therefore was worth investing taxpayer resources into it. Again, I know you find this answer not satisfactory, but the simple fact that a dealer is making money does not indicate that the dealer network in that community is maximizing revenue and repeat customers and satisfied customers and the things you need to be a successful car company. The company's large competitors are selling cars are using dealers that have more than twice as many cars per dealer sold than GM or Chrysler do. Now, some of that is due to the geographic makeup of where the sales take place, where GM and Chrysler are selling in more rural areas, but even when you compare urban area to urban area, which would be an apples-to-apples comparison. The throughput of these other companies is far higher, and our judgment and the judgment of many, many outside experts we've consulted is this is one, certainly not the only, but this is one of the reasons why the companies have not been successful.
You know, I think what makes it so hard is because there are other points where there are competing explanations. For instance, in one case, every dealer, 4 dealers in one town of over 100,000 people are being closed. And it's clear that a new dealer is going to be brought in. One new dealer, not one of the 4 that's being closed. And yet all of those dealers were doing fine. So rather than giving the nod to one of the 4 that have been with you for years and years and years, I don't mean you, I mean General Motors or Chrysler, but there just seems to be a loyalty disconnect here. And also, what you have just said is you want bigger dealerships that can do more volume sales, and yet you are, so you are doing bigger dealerships that, you are doing bigger dealerships, more volume, and yet in the contract that is being put forward by GM, you are if they sign it, they take away their right to protest now any dealer that would come in within 4 or 6 miles. So there's so much disconnection, which is why I think the dealers are feeling so wrong about this. And let me give you one other example of where I'd like to ask if the task force is going to take a position. One of the dealers that's being closed, Chrysler in this instance, Chrysler Financial is asking for 3% of their loan balance to cover potential chargebacks. Now, Chrysler, of course, has now closed, but these dealers are going to be able to sell used cars, but not under the Chrysler name. Yes. So for one dealer who's been in business for 90 years in Texas, it's a $90,000 requirement for a $1,500 a year annual risk. Now, is the task force going to look into that kind of requirement and say there should be some protection here with our taxpayer dollars?
Let me try to answer 2 or 3 of the points you raised, Senator. Regarding the new participation agreement, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but General Motors has been in active dialogue over the recent period with both the NADA, the National Association, as well as their own dealer council. And I believe that NADA has put out a statement indicating that they find the modifications that have been made to the go-forward agreement, participation agreement, to meet the majority of the dealer concerns. So I think concerns were raised. I think you and others brought them to the attention of GM, and I think good dialogue was had, and I think a good result. So certainly when members of Congress bring to our attention situations, we absolutely will do everything we can to facilitate dialogue between the affected stakeholder and the company. Now, we are not going to intervene and become the arbitrator of a dispute, but we certainly are going to ask and insist that the companies listen carefully to the concerns of any stakeholder, and if it's the particular situation you mentioned regarding the Chrysler dealer or the participation agreement, which is a broader issue, we are going to insist that they be listened to. But again, I don't want to mislead you. We're not going to substitute our judgment on every particular case. I do know in the case of the Chrysler dealers that are not being brought forward that every single car on their lots is going to be moved to another dealer with financing provided by either GMAC or other entities, and so all the dealers are going to be able to sell their cars at dealer cost. Again, this was a matter that was raised. Members like you brought it to attention, and I think a good solution was made. We certainly see our role as monitoring and staying on top of these things, and whether it's a senator or a mayor or anybody who identifies a stakeholder who's not being dealt with, we're going to insist on everybody getting a hearing. But as I said earlier, I don't want to mislead you. We're not going to get in and kind of arbitrate disputes between the company and its stakeholders. We're going to insist these companies manage themselves in a commercial fashion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, of course, my time is